You're listening to a 58 Ember production.
GIRLSCAMP, it's Girlscamp.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Girlscamp podcast. It's Haley Rawl, your host, and if you are navigating a faith deconstruction too, or simply fascinated by faith deconstruction journeys, by religion generally and Mormonism specifically, then you are in the right place. I have a quick little update right off the bat, which is that I finally decided, after having my old Instagram account deactivated for almost 3 weeks now, to just start a new account. It's called Girlscamp Pod, so at Girlscamp POD. If you've followed the saga, you know, but long story short, my old account got reported for going against community guidelines, which it did not. It got deactivated and I got sick of waiting to get it back. Hopefully I still do. But in the meantime, I just wanted a place to share and connect and all the things. So at Girlscamp Pod is where you can go for the time being. And thank you so much to anyone who helped support the page when I started it. It felt so vulnerable to be starting from square one again. And I just felt so much support and so many people rallying around me. And I just really, really appreciate it. Today's episode is with my friend Victoria Miner. Victoria is a fashion aficionado and influencer. And I paid this compliment to her during our conversation, but she is so good at not just providing inspiration, but at really breaking down kind of what goes into making an outfit for her. She shares a lot of really practical tips and tricks. And we also just discuss fashion in general as a form of self-expression and how Mormonism limits that in a lot of ways. And I just really, really loved this conversation so much. Without further ado, here is today's episode with Victoria Miner. Welcome, Victoria, to Girlscamp.
Hi, thank you.
I'm so happy you're here. I feel like we've been talking about doing this forever.
For months.
And I'm so happy. We just had another friend over, a mutual friend of ours, and he's like, oh, you're having Victoria on. That's going to be amazing. And I'm so excited to talk about this topic because we're talking about fashion. I feel like it's so related to ex-Mormonism, but it also just feels fun and lighthearted. And I'm in the mood for that today.
It's fun. Yeah, I think it's like a good way to be more like creative, especially after leaving Mormonism. It can be so like heavy. So it's fun to kind of like get to know yourself. And I feel like fashion is like a fun way to like get to know yourself outside of the religion.
Yes, totally. And I feel like it's one of the things, I mean, I talk about it all the time just because I feel like when you leave a religion, it can be very difficult in a lot of ways. And then there's these really fun, exciting things. And I think for so many people, probably especially women, because it's trickier as a woman, I think, in Mormonism to dress how you want to.
Yes.
This just feels like such a silver lining thing of like freedom and self-expression, and yeah, there's just so much tied up into it that I'm really excited to talk to you about.
It's my favorite topic.
Yay! Okay, so before we dive into the questions, so we have a lot of questions, really good questions people wrote in. I want to get a little bit of your story in a nutshell, just so people have context on you. I think it's always interesting, especially with these topics. You voice memoed me. We were talking through this. It sounds like your love of fashion also kind of like plays in some ways to your Mormon story. So if you could just tell us, let's start with where you grew up, like what kind of Mormon upbringing you had.
So I grew up in Pleasant Grove, Utah. My parents are both Hispanic. So my mom was a convert. My dad was born into it. So I was like always Mormon, and growing up in Pleasant Grove, it's like such a part of the culture, you know?
Totally.
But for me, I always had like a rebellious side to me as far as Mormonism went. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like rules, especially through like Young Women's and everything, where I thought I had the super strong testimony. I now looking back realize that I was mostly just kind of like saying things that I knew were expected of me. But I always ended up secretly buying like immodest clothes behind my mom's back, and then I'd like change out the bathroom at schools, just little things like that. I didn't like the rules. And after that, I was like pretty strong believing until I met Cam, my husband. So he was already out of the church. I was still fully in it. I envisioned my life a certain way. Like I was going to get married in the temple. And I always thought that was true happiness of like sitting in sacrament with your husband next to you. And he's in his white shirt and I'm in a dress and we have our kids there. And after like a year of dating, we started like talking about like, where do we see this going?
How old were you at this point? Like when did you start dating Cam?
So we started dating when I was 18. Literally, It was like 2 weeks after I graduated high school.
Wow, okay.
We started dating. And then I was like 19, where the idea presented itself to me, where I was like, do I need to break up with this guy? And I was like so in love with him and everything. But because he wasn't willing to go back to church or anything, I was like, this isn't going to go anywhere. So me trying to prove him wrong on all his like Joseph Smith history stuff, started doing a deep dive on that. And that's where I ended up finding a lot of like journal entries from women that were basically bamboozled into marrying Joseph Smith. I saw journal entries of theirs where they were like, I don't want to marry him, but he said that the gates of heaven will close permanently if I don't give him a yes, so I'm going to do it. And that to me was just so obvious manipulation. And I think because I wasn't, like, I still had that, it sounds so pick me, but I had that like rebellious side of me as a teenager, that it didn't take a lot for my faith to like crumble after seeing that, because I saw it for what it was. It was clear manipulation. And then I read the CES letter, saw videos of what happens in the temple, and I was like, holy fuck.
You're like,
I was like, I'm not down for this.
Yeah.
But also it felt like almost like a weight lifted off my shoulders, because it almost felt like I didn't align with the church culturally already. So the fact that I almost felt like I had permission to explore things outside of those like constraints, like that box that it puts you in, it was like almost like freeing.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that specific moment, because I feel like when you're digesting so much Mormon history for the first time, it's interesting what sticks out to people. But those journal entries are so powerful.
So powerful.
Just to be like, wait a second. I am also a young woman reading the words of other young women who were coerced into marrying a grown-ass man who had many other wives. How do you even justify that?
Exactly.
How do you even justify that?
Yeah. And like putting yourself in their shoes. I was 19 at the time when I was reading these things. Some of these women were literally 15, 16 years old.
Yeah, younger than you.
And then I'm thinking like, me at 19, if the prophet at the time, I think it was like Thomas S. Monson or something like that, if he told me like, hey, you have to marry me, or God said you can't make it into the celestial kingdom, like I would feel so sick. Like I just felt so icky. So kind of like putting that into perspective too was like huge.
Yeah, that's really huge. That's a pretty young age to leave, because I can imagine a lot of your peers at the time are going on missions and getting married in the temple. I mean, you were still in Utah. So I always admire people at that stage of life also, because that was probably before the big wave of what I feel like is more happening now with like lots of people leaving.
Yeah, 100%. Because I at the time didn't know anyone that had left besides Cam. And I always just assumed he was more like inactive type of a thing, not necessarily that he didn't believe it or had like these super strong opinions, because we just didn't talk about religion a whole ton that first year. Yeah, when I ended up leaving, I lost some friends. Family was really hard to like navigate. Luckily my older sister had already left, and so I kind of like had a little bit of a blueprint on like how to maneuver my parents, but it's still like I didn't talk to my dad for a while because it was like so heavy. My mom luckily was more understanding, but yeah, it was hard. And luckily now I feel like there is that wave over the last like couple years. There's been a wave, and it's so fun to finally be able to have people to like bond with over these things, because for a while the only source I had to talk to about this was like my older sister and Cam. But it's fun to just like with girlfriends type of thing, you know. It's
totally. I wanted to ask you one more thing about your upbringing, because you mentioned this when we were talking yesterday. You grew up going to a Spanish speaking ward, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned, we didn't dig into it, but you said you feel like that was culturally quite different. I'm curious what that was like.
It was actually crazy. I always went to a Spanish-speaking ward, and when I was 13, though, my parents split. My dad started going to an English-speaking ward, so every other weekend I was swapping between Spanish and English.
Got it.
And the ironic thing is I always heard that the church was the same no matter where you were, no matter what language and everything, and that was so wrong culturally, because I always grew up going to the Spanish ward. Like I always wore my same like black pencil skirt, and then I'd wear like a little frilly blouse or something and like the highest heels.
Rock on.
And then
Love
I started going to my dad's ward, the English speaking ward, and every single girl in that ward was wearing like the floral puff sleeve dresses that go all the way down to the ground, and they're wearing flats or like shorter heels, and me showing up with my black pencil skirt that's like really tight, and I love that it showed off my butt. I got stared at. I got talked to by the young women's like presidency because it was, even though it was technically modest, but it was like it didn't fit the norm of what they were used to. And even just like the interactions between adults to, I'm mostly speaking young women's just because that's like more informative for me, I guess. But like in my Spanish speaking ward, it's almost like you are more friends. You almost like see your leaders on like the same plane as yourself, which is easier to relate to. And this is just like from my experience, so it could be different for other people. But for me, going to an English ward, it was more authoritative,
more hierarchical, I can imagine.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely felt like an outlier going to the American wards because they would ask me to pray in English there, and I didn't know how to pray in English. Or they asked me to lead the young women's theme, and I didn't know it in English. I knew it in Spanish, and like I'm bilingual. My first language was technically Spanish, but also I basically learned English at the same time. And so I remember they asked me to lead the young women's theme in the English ward, and they had like 45 young women or something.
Scary.
It was terrifying. And also like in the Spanish ward, we had like 10 young women. So it was like so different. And I told them like, I don't know it in English. And they were like, that's okay. Just say it in Spanish and we'll just like say it in English at the same time.
You're
and
like,
I was like,
that's not how it works.
fuck. Like,
That's going to be very different.
Yeah. So I learned like the first like 5 words in English. So I started it saying in English, and then after I just started saying it in Spanish, and then everyone in the room noticed I was saying it in Spanish, and then they all like quieted it down, and I was just standing there like
reciting it in Spanish.
I don't know what to do.
Oh.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It's crazy just there's so much we could talk about there, because for those who don't know, I don't know. I mean, I think there's different pockets of the United States that do this, that have wards that are, I know there are wards like Polynesian wards. So I think it just depends on if there's like a population large enough in the state, then they can make like a Spanish speaking ward, or I know there's Polynesian wards. I think I've maybe heard of this. I'll have to fact check this. I feel like in San Francisco, there was maybe a ward that was maybe Korean speaking. So if there's like enough people who that's their native language or that's their culture or heritage, they'll make wards that are, which I think is super, super cool. I really love that they do that. But at the same time, it's an interesting, maybe double-edged sword, because then you see like this American ward, which was probably primarily white. Yeah. And they just are so homogenous, and they're not very well versed at like, oh, this is someone who speaks Spanish. We probably shouldn't like make them stand in front of the room. But they probably just like weren't used to that. It's interesting, the pros and cons, I guess, 100%. of having wards like dedicated to, you know, Spanish speakers or whatever it may be. But it sounds like the Spanish speaking ward was a lot better.
I honestly, I tell Cam this. I'm so glad I went to the Spanish speaking ward. And also like I miss the community aspect, because I am Hispanic, but living in Utah, I don't have a lot of like immediate relatives that live here that are Hispanic. So the fact that I was in the Spanish speaking ward, it felt like more of a community. I was able to like hone into my Hispanic side and have people to relate to. But yeah, it was super weird, like going to girls camp with our stake. Our ward, all the songs we knew were in Spanish, whereas all the other wards, like we'd all get together and sing songs and stuff, but like we were singing in Spanish, and it felt like we were just like this giant spotlight like shining on us. Totally. And it just felt so like awkward and weird. Yeah. But I mean, they were still friendly. It definitely feels like a different religion aspect as far as community goes.
Totally.
It's so weird.
It's so interesting. Yeah. And I feel like the cultural elements, like even when you were talking about hierarchy, I'm sure there's so much that plays into that, but you just see how culture and heritage also just inevitably like colors the way that people live their religion. Yeah. Which, yeah, it sounds like in the Spanish speaking ward, that feels like a much better, safer place to feel like friendly with your leaders as opposed to like
It was like
the
less
authority
judgy.
thing.
I think that's probably the best way to say it. It was like less judgmental. I'd
totally.
say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing all of that background. But it sounds like already there's some elements of like clothing and modesty were playing into your story. I can relate. I've shared my stories many a times on the podcast, but I feel like the biggest friction for me growing up as a Mormon woman, besides boys and boyfriends and making out and stuff like that, was clothing. It was, I always wanted to wear clothing that my mom didn't want me to wear, that the bishop pulled me aside and didn't want me to wear. And it always felt like a really big deal to me. I always just remember feeling constrained and like frustrated by it. I guess I'm just curious if you can speak more to that element of how you were kind of like exploring your own style at that point, still as a Mormon. Just delve into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I hate being put in a box. I hate being told what to do. So it was almost like an exciting thing when people were like, don't wear, like in young women's, you obviously don't wear garments yet, but they would always teach, pretend you have garments on. So that way you're used to it when you're older. And I was like, I'm never going to wear those fugly things. I never wanted to. So I was like, fuck that. But at the same time, like socially being around my ward, I was like, okay, I will show up wearing longer shorts or like the shirts with like sleeves on and stuff. But I hated that. So any chance I had to like go to my friend's house or something, I would end up rolling my sleeves. So I played soccer growing up. And I remember, especially like younger soccer, I was doing recreational soccer. And I would get like hair ties and scrunch the sleeves with the hair ties.
I remember this. Yeah.
And I remember it was like a scandal. There were parents that would complain to my coach. And honestly, it was recreational soccer. So like my coach was like, whatever.
He's like, I'm not getting paid to do this. Like,
yeah.
she can do what
and
she
I
wants
was
to
like,
do.
it was like almost, like that analogy of like the frog that slowly boils. So for me, it was like, I was almost like tiptoeing into like pushing the limits a little bit, scrunching my sleeves, or sometimes I would like pull my pants down a little bit to low rise just to show a tiny bit of midriff. Literally, it'd be like this much. Just like a little bit just to push the limits, but it was always secretive. I remember I bought a bikini also in high school, but no one knew about it besides my little sister. And I remember my mom had a pool at like the condo complex that we were living at the time. And I remember the first time walking into that pool, it was just me and my little sister. And I might as well have been naked.
Yep.
Titties out, coochie out.
Yep.
Like I might as well have been fully naked. And I remember like the tan lines also, which makes it feel so much worse.
It does call more attention to it
does.
when you have like a big farmer's tan. Yeah.
It's like everyone knows, like you don't normally wear these things. So
this is new to you.
Yeah. So for me, it was like, I'm going to wear this bikini. And I felt so uncomfortable and weird. But then I kept on reminding myself bikinis are normal. And also it was literally just me and my sister at the pool and that was it. But it's like bikinis are normal. I'm going to get rid of these tan lines so I don't feel as naked when I do sneakily wear a tank top or a tube top or short shorts or whatever it was.
I was just thinking, because I relate on every level, and I was thinking like, why did I do that as a teenager too? I played soccer as well, and there was one day at soccer where it was so hot outside and we were playing like a scrimmage. So we had pennies on, those mesh pennies. And a couple of the girls kind of went to the side and they took off their t-shirts and they put the penny on just like over a sports bra. And our coach got so mad at us.
No.
He kind of said it too in this way of like, you girls, if you do this makes me look bad. Almost like this makes me look pervy.
Ooh, that's creepy that
like
you even
that's
said
what he
that.
insinuated was, you need to not do this because then people are going to like think certain things about me. We are playing a sport in Utah summer. It's probably 90 degrees outside and we are hot. And like
literally,
it's just, anyway, I don't know why that story came to mind, but there's so many different elements of why you want to like present yourself the way you do. And I feel like a huge piece of it is comfortability, truly just being comfortable. Like bikinis, for me at least, I just find them so much more comfortable and practical wearing to the pool. I don't like a big wet piece of swimsuit fabric over my stomach. Like it's just not comfortable to me.
Yes.
I don't want the tan lines. There's that aspect of it. But then I'm also just thinking about like how interesting it is that even at a young age, there's like such an innate desire to just want to self-express through clothing. And I don't know. I just don't think probably either of us were motivated. I mean, for sure I was at a certain point by being like, I want to look sexy or like show my legs or show my shoulders. But more than anything, I just wanted to feel cute in the way that I wanted to.
Yes. And I feel like with Mormonism, especially in like young women's and like as women, I guess in general, they try to they have a blueprint of what they want you to be. And that blueprint includes how to dress, but also the way you dress really does reflect your personality quite a bit. And so then it's like they're almost trying to like create these NPCs where you're all the exact same like black and white thinking type of people. When in reality, it's really nice to be able to like get to know yourself, your likes, your dislikes, cultural things that you have observed that you're like, oh, this is a part of me now. I traveled to like France, how you just went there, and you say you see someone like wearing, I don't know, like a really pretty black blouse or whatever. And then you're like, I love this. And it's because you've like traveled, you've seen things from a different perspective. And I feel like with the church, they have a hard time allowing people to have perspective.
That's what's so deep about it. One of the things that's so deep about it, you're so right, is it's control. We want to control these teenagers and developing humans. We want to control them so that they're controlled, so that they do what we say, so that anyone who meets a Mormon or walks into a church building, it's like, oh, look, they're all wholesome. They're all wearing their floral dresses that go to the ground. They're all wearing their flats or whatever it may be.
Yep.
And I'm thinking about being on a mission. You would have hated it.
I know I would. I hear stories and I'm like,
You're talking about rules. I'm like, you would not like the rules on a mission. But I feel like that's such a big part of being a missionary is they like want you to look a very uniform way. And it's like, you know, people, this is the first representation of the church and we're representing the Lord and whatever. And that was so aggravating. I would go on P-Day. I would literally go, because P-Day is the day you can like go shopping and do activities for like 3 hours. Every single P-Day, almost every single P-Day of my mission, I would go to H&M or Zara and I would just try clothes on. And
I wouldn't even buy them.
I wouldn't even buy them because they weren't missionary clothes. I would just like go try clothes on because I couldn't wear jeans for 18 months.
I would die.
The need I had to just like put on clothing that I like wanted to wear. I would just go like try on clothes in the dressing room and just like be like, oh, one day I'll be able to like wear normal clothes again. And I also brought a pair of bright bubblegum pink Doc Martens, which most missions you never would have been able to get away with this. I think the rules are you're supposed to wear like neutral colored flats. You can't even wear sandals. Anyway, I would wear these like pink Doc Martens, kind of like I would try and do it like not when I was going to see the mission president or whatever, but it was like my one thing that I'm like,
to like hold on to your identity.
I'm going to wear these pink shoes. I'm going to wear these pink shoes.
I'm so glad you did that.
I'm so glad I did that. And it really did feel like this like little tiny thing I could do that I was like, this is a little piece of me when like everything else has just gotten completely drowned out. My identity is being like beaten out of me at every turn.
Yeah.
Yes. And clothing's a huge part of that.
It really is.
It's a huge part of that.
It really is. The funny thing is like, because I've been out, I'm 28 years old. So I've been out for like 9 years now. And seeing it from such an external perspective, like I've seen documentaries where there's a cult and the cult is required to everyone wears red. There's one documentary on Netflix. I can't remember what it was called, but everyone was wearing red in this town. They could wear whatever they wanted as long as it was like red. And now I look at it through like Mormonism and I'm like, the fact that you have this underwear that keeps you looking quote unquote modest, like that is the same thing. I don't see a difference.
It's the same thing. I'd rather wear red too.
Yeah.
Like I'd rather
literally,
be
like,
able to wear
is a
red
really flattering color on most people.
I'll join that cult instead. Like I'd rather wear a
like,
red
at least
tank
you can
top.
wear, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I was like booty shorts as long as they're red, you're good.
No, that's so true. That's why like it's such an easy thing. I think it's part of why I'm so passionate is it's such an easy thing to discount because I think you could look at clothing and very easily say, I know that this is the case because it's been said. I'm sure you've had this said to you many times too, but just like, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that much to give up if it's what God wants from me, right? And I think that it is. And I think that that's one of the rubs where I was like, I don't believe in a God that would just like want me to be really uncomfortable in my own body.
Yeah.
Because that's how I felt when I wore garments. I genuinely did feel that way. And I know so many other people did too. I remember when I was trying to make sense of it and be like, am I being so vain? Am I being so selfish to feel so much pain around having to wear garments? And now in retrospect, I'm like, no, that's like a really big thing.
Well, and how sad that you were starting to doubt yourself and you were feeling guilty and vain for wanting to like express yourself externally. And also they do say it's such a small thing, but you can say that about every little rule within the church. Like, okay, give up the way you dress. It's such a small thing. Stop drinking coffee. It's such a small thing. Those are all small things, but those small things end up piling up into literally creating this NPC that they want you to be. And if it's externally you, then internally they'll be easier to like control you for longer and everything.
100%. It's control. And yes, what we put on our bodies is a huge form of control because it really should not matter. And obviously there's like the modesty aspect of it all, which I think that's something that's reflected on a societal level. Like we just went to France. The young girls, like toddlers, don't even wear bikini tops. They just wear like swimsuit bottoms because they don't have boobs yet. It's like they look the same as like a little boy. Yeah. And it's like even that culturally is so hugely different than like the way we view women and even girls in our society. I was swimming at this beach and I like looked over and there was this woman. I see two gorgeous round tits just like floating above the water. And it's this grandmother, like I don't know if she's a grandma, but this white-haired woman floating on her back, just boobs. Only thing above the water is her boobs. And no one even no one cares. Cause like who cares? Yeah. Just no one cares. And I was like, wow, what could that have been like? Think of how differently our brains would operate.
100%.
And not only our brains about our bodies, but the brains of everyone around us about how they perceive our bodies. And that's like on an American level. But then obviously when you bring it back down to Mormonism, it's like that times a billion. Yeah.
Which is another thing as to why I think it's so crazy. The fact that Mormonism tries to put constraints on like fashion because like you said in other cultures a lot of the women are topless or like the men also are topless, you know, like because men also have garments and they shouldn't be shirtless or whatever. Like it's kind of the same thing with like tattoos, which I know that they like got a little bit more lenient on because they were saying that like culturally you can't really do that, which okay, but like fashion is the same thing.
It's so true. There is such a huge cultural element too. If you grow up in a place that's always 100 degrees and then you're just being expected to wear the same garments as everybody else, that's so impractical and actually legitimately unhealthy for like people in certain climates too. I think it's unhealthy regardless, but it's like particularly so. It just also, to what we're talking about with like trying to create these uniform people, it can also erase cultural differences and ways of culturally expressing as well. Yeah.
Like the church is extremely, I think, like two-dimensional. It was created for a very specific demographic, white people in America type of a thing. And so for them trying to be so global, it's like trying to force a puzzle piece into a puzzle that does not fit in.
100%. And I mean, Germany is like, there's a lot of similarities with America in a lot of ways, but I remember sensing that even then. I'm like, these people asking them to stop drinking tea even. It's so deeply embedded into who they are as a people. It would be cruel to say, give up the tea that your grandmother made you since you were a kid. It's like, what the fuck? Why? It's fucking tea. Like, but you see those, I remember kind of like witnessing those cultural differences too, and just being like, this is such a huge deal for people. Like these things are meaningful to them beyond just like a drink. Like it means something to them to drink coffee. It means something to them to like have a beer, you know?
Yes.
And realizing, yeah, to your point, it's just like really hard, I think, if you don't grow up in like a very Mormon community. Those things are just like a huge part of life for people. And it is cruel, I think, to like ask people to give those things up because it's also just like so trivial anyway.
Yeah.
Because like no one can really give good answers as to why any of these things are actually important. That's the thing with garments too. I did a deep dive on this and I can link the episode in the show notes where I talked about this, but the church has never really been clear about why garments are necessary. The only thing that they really say is the symbols, because there's like symbols on the breast and like whatever. Those could be a tattoo. Those could be on a tank top or on a bra. There's a couple moments where they've said like, well, we do want to encourage modesty, but it's like there's no real reason that garments need to be what they are. No one has really given good reason besides the symbols. And it's like, then make them more comfortable for people. Allow people options for how they want to like have those symbols represented.
Like put it on a necklace.
Yeah, literally.
Like, let's make
Cute.
it easier.
Yeah, seriously. Like I'd wear it. No, I wouldn't wear that one. But like there are, I'm just saying that to also point out it is about control because there's not really backing for like why these things are the way that they are.
Besides them wanting to like enforce a dress code.
Exactly. Even though they're like pretending that
yeah.
that's not what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm loving this already so far. Let's dive into the questions. I'm really excited. I want to pay you a compliment before we jump into these questions. You are so good at not only being fashion inspiration, but at explaining styling. And I'm so grateful for that personally. I've said this to you before, but I actually mean it. When you post a video, I'm like actually taking notes because you're so
nice.
good at explaining your decisions that you make, how different people can like make decisions. And I just like love the way that you talk about all of this.
Thank you.
I feel like there's lots of fashion inspiration out there, which is also so wonderful, but I feel like it's harder to find people who are like really breaking it down. So I'm excited to get into it with you.
That's so nice of you.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of it, I get like imposter syndrome because a lot of it is like my opinions. I didn't go to like fashion school or anything, but I always, since I was a kid, I always loved it. I have like renditions of what like my future clothing line was going to look like that I made when I was like 7 years old. It was going to be called On the Scene.
Obsessed.
And then I'd also like the day before school, I would always pick out my outfit and I used like a thumbtack to put a thumbtack like where my shirt would be and then a thumbtack for my pants. And so every day before school in elementary and everything, I'd choose my top, I'd choose my bottoms, and I'd hang them up because I wanted to look at it with my shoes lined up underneath. So it's just something I always really liked.
I love that. I feel like fashion is one of those things, not that it's not something you can learn, but I kind of see it in some ways like art. Some people are just born with it. It's just like a gift, I really think. And I feel like you definitely have that gift. I'm going to jump into the questions and we'll keep covering some of this. But the first question, someone asked, what did you do to discover your style without the constraint of modesty, but also not spending a ton of money? So I kind of just want to talk about with this question, where would you suggest people begin? Someone is newly post-Mormon, they're not wearing garments anymore, or they're trying to explore differently without certain constraints. They don't have an unlimited budget to just go buy a bunch of stuff. Where would you say is like a good place to start just like figuring out your own style?
Honestly, I would say just with you, the stuff you already have in your closet, just try to rewear them differently. Try to roll the sleeves up for your shirts, or maybe you have like a silk scarf or something. Try wearing it around your head instead of as a belt or on your purse. So starting with just like trying to figure out how to restyle things that's already in your closet. Because honestly, a lot of the stuff that I own right now is shit that I've had since high school. And also, it might be because I'm a hoarder, but
well, it's come in handy.
Yeah, it has, because guess what? It's back now. But just figuring out how to restyle things. And also, I love thrifting, and you can find some really incredible clothes for like such an affordable price too.
Yeah.
But it's more so just getting like crafty with it. Also, recognizing that to find your personal style, you have to be willing to experiment, and also with experimenting, mentally accepting that you're going to have flops. You're going to look back and you're going to be like, what the fuck was I thinking? But like, you won't be able to figure out your personal style if you're not trying new stuff out. And like there will be slays among the flops, and also things go in and out of style. I'm sure what I'm wearing right now, 5 years from now, I'm gonna look back and be like, that's fugly, Victoria, what were you doing? But you just need to like be willing to like explore and accept. I'm gonna have days that I look like a clown, but I'll also look like a queen on others.
Yeah, it's
know?
like part of the journey.
Yeah.
I'm actually really glad you said that. Kind of where I'm at in my fashion journey, I feel like I've kind of figured out certain things that I feel like flatter my body, certain things that I feel comfortable in or cute in, but I feel like I'm really, really comfortable. And I'll like go on TikTok or go on Pinterest and be like, I feel like there's more here for me, but I'm scared.
Yeah.
And I'm nervous because I don't want to like try something. And then it's like an imposter syndrome thing. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the TikToks of girls like wearing a baseball cap and they're like, everybody knows I don't wear baseball caps. And like, that's kind of how you feel. But I think that's also this like weird ingrained thing of like, I don't want to look like I'm trying. I don't want to look different unless it's the right kind of different. Which is another reason fashion is so fun, is like it's a big part of, I think, like deconstructing some of those deeper messages
100%. Yeah, I think I just made I made a reel about this where when you wear something that's out of the norm in a town, if I were to wear something like this, even just going to Walmart in Utah County, like I always get stared at.
Yeah.
In my reel, and this is something I've always like done, is that if someone's staring at me, it can be uncomfortable at first. Like you feel like a freaking fish in a bowl and or a zoo animal, but just like in your head being like, I'm influencing them. Like, they have never seen a sleigh this hard. You're welcome for giving you something nice to look at.
Yep.
But it can be hard. So it's almost like you start with like baby steps, I'd say. So even like the baseball caps, I was the same way. I didn't like wearing baseball hats. I felt like I looked like an imposter type of a thing. And then I slowly started wearing them, and you almost like get used to it. Again, this is so funny. The analogy of the frog slowly boiling. Yeah. But like in a good way.
Yep.
You know?
Totally.
You have to get used to it.
Totally.
So baby steps.
Yeah. I think that there's things I wear now that are pretty tame probably, but I'm like, oh, I never would have been brave enough to wear something like that.
Yeah.
And then you get it and you try it on and then you're like, okay, I think I'm going to wear this here. And then you wear it. And yeah, I feel like I really love that. I also love what you said, just bringing it back to the first thing you said about repurposing things that you already have. I think my first instinct is always, okay, everyone's wearing this type of boxer short. Let me find that exact boxer short and buy it. And that will teach me my style. And obviously, like, I'm not saying don't buy anything ever, but I'm trying to be better at, okay, I always wear shorts and a tank top. Maybe I add a belt. Maybe I try a frilly sock. Maybe I do a boot instead of a sneaker. Just trying to like it's kind of like that game.
Yes, exactly.
I love that game.
I literally lived on that thing. Maybe I need to like accredit all of my fashion
honestly
stuff to that game.
I think that we all go back to that, where you like put in the new shirt with the thing and then you're like, wait, actually let's slide in these.
That was my thing with my freaking pinned up shirt and pants.
You were doing that.
I literally was doing that in
real
real life. So honestly, if you like just do that, you know, or lay it out on your bed. That's what I do now. I lay it like my shirt on my bed and then my bottoms on my bed, because it's so annoying to put something on and be like, no, this is ugly and I'm going to change out of it. And then you get flustered because it's so exhausting to
you're
be changing in and out,
and it's messy.
And then there's a mess. Yeah. So I just like grab it from the hanger, lay it on the bed, look at it. Okay, this looks boring. My go-to is always adding a belt if it looks boring, or some type of like, I've been into cuffs lately, or the way you do your hair. That actually plays a pretty big role in how your outfit looks. So just like little things like that.
Yes, I've been thinking that. I'm actually going to skip to this question because someone said, what are some cute ways to accessorize if you're not a jewelry or purse girl? So you just covered some, but what are some other thoughts on that?
Belts are huge. Hair is a big thing, especially in Utah. A lot of the girls wear their hair down and wavy. Not that that's like a bad thing, but I do think that it's fun to explore different ways of wearing your hair when it comes to fashion. You don't, at least for me, I don't want to just look the same every single day. Me saying that with a slick back bun again. But
I know what you mean though. I totally know what you mean.
Like switching it up. Like you have that cute scrunchie in your hair. Like that's a fun way to like switch up just like a ponytail. Or socks, frilly socks, colorful socks, little things like that. Scarves. I love wearing like a headscarf or a scarf as a belt. Or I did Carrie Bradshaw inspired. I grabbed one of my silk scarves and tied it around my arm.
Love.
She did that.
I remember that. Yes.
And I'm obsessed with that.
Yeah, so
and
cute.
that's also something like, honestly, when I wear that, sometimes I'm like, people probably think I look stupid, but guess what? I feel fucking
They
hot,
don't know that I'm literally copying the most iconic queen of all time, Carrie Bradshaw.
Exactly.
Yeah, they
So
just
it's
don't
like,
know.
They just don't. It's the girls that get it. And if
Exactly.
they don't get it, then it's like, cool. People have different styles. That's all it is. It's personal style.
Totally.
You know?
I love that because I feel like, I've been thinking this with hair too, because I think another person who's so good at this, do you know Tishmal? I'll send you her profile. You would love her. She's a friend of mine, but she's really good at accessorizing too. I've noticed she'll wear these scrunchies that are like really big or like floral, and they're so cute. It's actually crazy how much of a difference that makes.
Yeah.
If you're wearing shorts and a tank top and a pair of sneakers and you add some fun hair accessory, I feel like something like that can take a very pretty basic outfit and make it feel more fashionable and more expressive.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a good way to like slowly figure out your personal style. The big scrunchies and everything, I think they're so cute. And for me, for some reason, I can't get myself to wear like a big scrunchie, even though I love it on other people, but it feels too feminine for my personal style.
Totally.
It's a good way to experiment, because I have experimented with scrunchies and then I was like, oh, I just like don't feel like myself.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's a cheap way to do it, because you're probably like, okay, now I can gift my friend a $10 scrunchie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The little things. Socks, my favorite. Knee-high socks, colorful socks, frilly socks.
Yeah. I actually was going to say, when I went, so I just went to France. I hate packing. So I was like, I am going to figure out every single outfit I'm wearing, the necklace I'm wearing with the outfit, the socks I'm wearing with the outfit. And I kind of made it like a project.
Yeah.
And it was so fun. It was like that game where I was like, okay, I have this skirt I want to wear, but what shirt do I wear it with? And I guess the reason I bring that up too is I think it's sometimes easy to look at people who are like really stylish and be like, they just roll out of bed, throw on an outfit and like slay. It's actually, I wouldn't even say work because it doesn't feel that way, but it's like, it doesn't just happen.
Like it takes effort.
Yes, it takes effort. I think there's a lot of people who it's just like, they don't really care, and that's awesome. I think there are a lot of people who like do care, but you actually have to like try.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
that seems so obvious, but I actually need to experiment. I actually need to like take some time and energy to like figure this out, you know?
And the fun thing is like it's harder at first, but once you like train your brain to think that way, it comes more naturally. And then you naturally start gravitating towards certain accessories or certain styles without even like really realizing of like, oh, I'm finding my personal style. But I also will say, I don't think that finding your personal style is like, wow, I figured it out. This is the destination, because we as people evolve. We have new experiences. We gain different perspectives and talk to different people and whatever. And so it's just like this never ending journey, but like, it's fun. That sounds so daunting. It's fun. I'm not going to be dressing like this for forever, because maybe one day I'll realize that I actually like wearing something completely different. Like I like wearing dresses every day, or I don't know.
Totally. I love that too, because I think there's sometimes fashion content I see that's like, can be helpful. I'm not saying it's not, but there's like a big trend of like, figure out your 3 words. I don't know if you saw
I've
that.
seen that, yeah.
And that's always stressed me out, because I'm like, it depends on the day. Like there's some days where my 3 words are totally different than the next day. And I also think with personal style, I'm also learning that my personal style can look very different from day to day. And that's like part of what's fun about it. Some days I want to be like more casual, and some days I want to be like super, super girly.
I feel like that's also going back to like putting yourself in a box. And I hate that. It's not as black and white thinking. It's definitely just like the spectrum of what's my mood and what colors do I feel like wearing and whatever.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, someone asks, I have a lot of clothes that I still like from my garment wearing days, but now when I wear them, they trigger modesty/purity culture trauma. How can I reclaim baggy and less revealing styles without feeling oppressed?
I feel this so hard.
It's such a thing.
It's been 9 years for me. And even like me as a teenager, I already was rebelling, and I still have such a hard time. Jorts, I'm obsessed with them. They're super trendy right now too. But whenever I wear jorts, for me, what I've been doing is I wear it with like a tank top or something super tight, or whatever, or even like a lot of long skirts are in right now. Denim long skirts, white pleated long skirts and stuff. And I think they're beautiful. But unless I'm wearing a fucking bra, I'm not, you won't catch me wearing one of
gotta
those.
be topless to balance it out.
Exactly. So it's almost like I don't know if I have like such a clear answer because I'm still trying to work through this myself, but it's almost like trying to counter it a little bit, you know? Even like in the winter, what I do, because obviously in the winter you're gonna be quote unquote modest because it's fucking cold outside.
Yeah, it's snowing.
What I end up doing, it's like if I'm wearing a cardigan, I'll let the cardigan slide off my shoulder a little bit, or like my sweater, it's like showing a strap or whatever. And it's just like the little things.
Totally.
And even if you're wearing like a short sleeve shirt underneath the cardigan, or like a long sleeve shirt underneath the cardigan, even just the cardigan slipping off your shoulder a little bit gives off a little bit of like non-Mormonism.
Yes, it's a different energy for sure.
It's insinuating immodesty.
For sure. This question is so funny because I was like, okay, we all have the same brain, because I have dresses that are so pretty. A lot of dresses that you probably couldn't even wear them with garments. I put them on. All I see in the mirror is a sister missionary. I cannot unsee it. Yeah. And maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the line, that will be different. But for now, I'm just kind of like, it is what it is. And I would say I do the same thing. Like I'm wearing right now like a longer pair of shorts that I probably could have worn with garments, but I'm wearing a super tight V-neck top. Yeah. And so it like balances out. I also think it's really fun actually to have, I know you've talked about this, to have contrasting. Like if you're wearing a super baggy pair of jeans, then wear something maybe frilly on top. Like there's ways that you can kind of contrast that I think is really fun. And I think that's a really good way, to your point about experimentation. Like you don't need to throw out all of your jorts. Like even in France, I was wearing this pair. I bought this pair of shorts when I was in London while I was going to BYU. And I was so excited because I could wear them with garments. And they were like this long light wash. They're actually a great pair of shorts. Ooh. And I almost gave them away so many times since leaving the church. And now they're back. I'm like, oh my God, my little Mormon ass bought these shorts just because I had to. And now I'm like walking around France. I'm like, it looks like the cool girls are all wearing these shorts. And I feel like that's just a funny example of how you can reuse things like that. You can do that.
And the other thing I actually really like, because you reminded me of this with the contrasting stuff, I love balancing a feminine and masculine contrast in an outfit. And what I've been loving that's really trendy right now, wearing a lacy maxi skirt or like a satin long skirt or dress, and then you wear it with like a gigantic oversized t-shirt over it.
Cute.
Technically that's garment friendly, but because it's a giant t-shirt, you wouldn't wear that to church still. So it's not as Mormon-y looking.
True. You know? Yeah. It kind of like, that's a fun way to play with it too. Cause I do feel like, not that you had to be traditionally feminine to wear garments, but like there is also elements of that, I think, in our upbringing. So it's kind of fun to like play with the masculine feminine thing as well.
100%.
Okay, next question. Any tips for women who are a little more curvy? I love your style, but my body just doesn't look great in a lot of the stuff you both wear, and I want to look as cute as you always do. That's so very sweet. Nice. Yeah, thoughts on different body types?
I would say like the main thing is finding influencers that have your similar body type. That's what I do. I'm 5'6". I'm also brown, and I have teeny tiny boobs. So like I will grab inspo from influencers or even just people on the street that I really like their outfit, and specifically just trying to like see like, oh, what do I like about this person's outfit? The similar body type to me. Is it low-rise jeans? Are they wearing baggy jeans? Are they wearing a deep cut or a mock neck, or, you know, like little things like that. Totally. But it helps to be able to see certain silhouettes and everything on a similar body type to yourself.
Totally. Yeah, that was my thought too. And I think that's what's so great about TikTok and Instagram. There's just like so many people who have all different sorts of styles that you can find. And I will say, like, it's definitely, I think, a problem in fashion just generally. Fashion is catered toward skinny women. Yeah. Just even with models, this is not the same thing at all. Just with height. When I'm looking at a Zara model, for sure, they're like at least 5 inches taller than me, which is fine. That's not a big deal. But I guess I'm saying, like, I can imagine that would be difficult when you're seeing like more people with the same skinny body type, that a lot of clothes are made for that skinny body type. I feel like that would be difficult. And I'm glad that there are more people. It seems like I follow a handful of different creators with different body types. I feel like it's important to find people who do have a similar body type because certain trends are going to like look very different on different people. And yeah, it's funny because with small boobs, I actually, I have a boob job consultation today.
Shut up.
I know.
I am so jealous.
I know. I'm excited. We'll see. I like don't know what my time frame will be, but I've actually been thinking, I actually feel like small boobs are way better for fashion.
I agree with that.
I really do think I want to get a boob job. I'm really excited about it, but I'm like, I'm going to have to like kind of reimagine what I wear.
Yeah.
And not even in a way of like, because I'm going to have to cover up boobs. The way that clothes sit on me is going to be very, very different.
Yes.
And I actually feel like fashion, like a lot of models and stuff, it's more common to actually have smaller boobs. 100%. It seems like, from what I've noticed.
Yeah. I feel like with smaller boobs, there definitely is like privilege to it. I do wish my boobs were a little bit bigger.
I know.
That would be great.
I know. I know. There's a pros and cons. Yeah, for sure.
But I do feel like as far as fashion goes, we're not as like restrained as far as like how deep of a shirt goes, because also men can be creepy.
Totally.
And if your cleavage is out, I feel like a woman's cleavage it's beautiful, and I love that like women are doing that, but also you don't want to get fucking catcalled out on the street when you're walking by yourself. Especially
with the modesty of it all. I wear certain things that I'm like, it would be very different on a woman with like, I literally have like an A cup, even a B cup or a C cup. Some of the clothes I wear, not only are they going to look different, but it's going to be different to wear them just because like you're revealing more when I just like don't have that much to reveal. Yeah. And it's so tricky. There's a question about this too. Someone says, do you think that wearing certain clothing when invited to someone's home can be disrespectful? Like someone going to my Mormon, like somehow going to my Mormon grandparents' house in a tube top feels rude? Question mark. I go back and forth on this. I want to talk about that, but I've been thinking about how that does, I think, vary depending on your body type. But agreed. I want to be so careful saying that because I'm not like, well, if you have big boobs, you better cover them up. That is not how I feel at all. I'm more so acknowledging, like almost the privilege that you're talking about, where it's like, if I wear a bikini, I don't really have boobs, so it's like I'm not getting the same reaction that I think women with boobs do get. Yeah. And so like I just want to acknowledge that that's probably a different experience and like a different mental, it's just different. Exactly. You don't get like sexualized. Yes. I think that's what it is. You don't get sexualized as much when you have smaller boobs. Yep. So what would you say about wearing certain clothing to Mormon grandparents' house? I love this question because it fires me the fuck up. Yes. I, for me personally, that makes me want to show up in a thong bikini. I feel like that they need exposure therapy to the real world. Like people normally dress like this. I can understand, especially when I first was like leaving and I was more like open to like showing my family I'm wearing tank tops now or whatever. And I did feel weird at first showing up in a tank top or shorter shorts or whatever. But it's, again, the frog slowly getting boiled is they get used to it. And I feel like literally as long as your coochie's not out and your fucking nipples are not hanging out, you're fine. It is not your job how people react to what you're wearing. This is something I'm still really teaching myself. If I feel comfortable, it is not my job if someone else feels uncomfortable about my shoulders showing. And the thing is with that game is you can never win, because guess what? Mormon grandpa wants you to be wearing a long floral dress. Like you can never win that game anyway, because everyone has different rules around what they think is modest and what they think is whatever. Why even try and play that game for other people? I feel like the way that I think about this is like, I want to feel comfortable. I definitely think there's an element of like, okay, I remember the first time I was just at a family reunion and I'm like, I'm just going to wear what I normally wear. It has taken me a while to get to that point. It takes a minute. But I did it and I didn't even think about it. I like really didn't. And I was like, oh yay. Like I'm so happy I'm at that point. There was a long time where like going to a family reunion, I packed a little differently. That was not for the comfortability of the people around me. That's because I wasn't quite comfortable yet with whatever attention that might bring. Yes, agreed. I've had family members in the past that when I would wear a tank top, they'd be like, oh, aren't your shoulders cold? And I'd be like, no, it's 95 degrees outside. Are your ankles cold?
Like, so I just feel like it's a lot for someone to expect you to conform into dressing the way that they expect you to dress, because if you're trying to please everyone with the way that you dress, you will not end up wearing what you actually do want to wear.
Totally.
But it is easier said than done, and it does take a minute to like get used to it, and it'll take a minute for them to get used to it as well.
Yep.
But you got to start somewhere.
Do you want to dress your whole rest of your life, especially if you've left the church? Like, that's fucking hard. Congratulations, you did it. Now you deserve this freedom.
Yeah.
Don't spend the rest of your life like, oh shit, am I going to see my grandpa, or is this such and such person going to be there? Like, again, I think there's a grace period for sure. But I think with these things, there's always going to be an element of like, this is new, and that might feel scary. And then all of a sudden it's not. Like, my family has not seen me in a t-shirt for the past 3 years because I'm like, I'm wearing a tank top when it's the summer. And like, it is what it is. And also, to your point, it's just unfortunate that as a society, and then also as a Mormon culture, that people are like so bent out of shape by like a tube top.
What you wear.
It's like, your grandpa can't see your shoulders. That's creepy. But it's because he's been trained to think a certain way about all of these things.
It's so ingrained in their head.
Yeah.
And so I would say some advice for that also is, maybe if you don't feel comfortable or you feel like the tube top is too much, start with like a thicker tank top, a mock neck tank top. So at least it's like high, and like slowly work your way to a tube top. Because again, they'll just slowly get used to it.
Totally. I also feel like something I've thought about is I will buy certain items of clothing. It's not even necessarily like, oh, I don't want my mom to see me wearing that. I'm probably going to post a selfie on Instagram. But I'm like, I wouldn't wear this to like Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
And not because it's like sexier, but yeah, I guess because it's sexier, but more so just because like, I'm not trying to be super sexy for Sunday dinner, which if you are, that's great. More power to you. But there are certain tops that I buy, or certain like skirts that I'm like, I will probably wear these on like date nights, or I'll probably wear these at like a, you know, like
going
more
out
of an
dinner
occasion.
with the girls
exactly,
or something.
Exactly. And not even necessarily because it's like, oh, I don't want to be immodest around certain people, but it's more so I'm not probably going to wear like a tight, sexy bodycon dress. Usually when I'm around my family, because we're not usually at occasions where like I'm going to wear something like that, if that makes sense. I think a lot of this is like, we make it a little more complicated because we've lived in like such a weird alternate reality where it's like, for a lot of people, it's not that complicated because you're kind of just wearing what's appropriate for the occasion. Yeah. But yeah, if you're going to your grandparents' house and you're comfortable in a tube top and like shorts or jeans, like that's perfectly normal. Yeah. We've just been taught to think that it's not. And so there's like some undoing.
Let's help them broaden their horizons.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Grandpa can handle it. Okay, someone says, I'm 30 years old and I left the church 3 years ago. I'm finally wearing clothes that I always felt most attractive and myself in, but never could, especially as a teen. Now that I'm an adult, I feel silly dressing up sometimes the way my teen self always wished to, and it is hard to find a balance. Tips.
I love this because I also feel like that's, again, putting yourself in a box. And again, easier said than done, but in my opinion, I don't think that there is an age on dress code. There's this lady on Instagram. I wish I could remember what her name was. She slays.
I know who you're talking about.
White hair.
White little bob. I'll find her.
Literally,
and post her.
Yes. She wears tank tops, tube tops, bikinis, her sunglasses, and she's wearing high heels. Like,
she's everything to me.
I just don't think that there's like an age for dress code. I think whatever you feel is comfortable. And if your teenage self would be like so excited to be wearing a tube top that's like super fitted, do it. And there's ways to like make it more like sophisticated if that's more like your vibe. If you want to wear it with maybe like more straight leg jeans and a boot, you know, or you could dress it down and make it more casual and just wear it with jorts or micro shorts or whatever. But I think it's just like a reminder to just not keep yourself in a box. You know?
100%. This was another thing I was thinking in France. Bentley and I were sitting at a restaurant and there was a table next to us and there was like an older mom with her husband and her kids. And I don't know, she looked to be like maybe 60s. And she was wearing, it was like so tame, but it was just like a spaghetti strap dress. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at her and I was realizing I am so unaccustomed to seeing older women's bodies because I think another part of our culture and also American society is like, once you're a certain age and your shoulders might have some sunspots, then you cover them up. And I was like, this is so healing and special looking at this older woman's body. She's not embarrassed of her body. It's so beautiful. And all throughout France, there's no age where you can't wear a tank top anymore. There's no age where you can't wear a bikini anymore. You don't age out of that. And it's really beautiful to see, because I think there's this messaging in our culture where it's like, okay, that's fun and good for a while, but like once you're mature enough, you need to like move on from that.
Yes.
And I don't think that's true either. I remember when I got my garments, and I was so sad. And I remember saying, it's okay, because I would eventually have to stop wearing short shorts. I would eventually have to stop wearing tank tops,
so
because
sad.
that's just what women do. That's what you do. You just mature and you start covering up your body more.
Yeah.
And I like convinced myself of that because I wanted to make myself feel better that I was having to do that. And it's so funny because now I'm 30 and I'm dressing more like a hoe than ever, and I love it. And I feel, and I don't even feel like a hoe. Like I always, people get mad when I say that because it's a joke, but I don't feel like I'm not age appropriate at all. And people will say that about being a mom. I love nothing more than going out with my twins and I'm dressed just the way I want to be.
100%.
I'm like, who cares if I'm a mom? What does that have to do with anything about how I have to dress?
That goes back to like keeping your personal identity. I feel like in our culture here also, like you said, as you age, there's this expectancy. You get short haircut and you dress this certain way, more conservative and whatever. But also you have this like mentality. Maybe this is just me. I don't know. But you have this like mentality that as you age, life is over. And I think it's so incredible when I see women who are older, they're still slaying. Like that. I want to be that person, you know, like it's beautiful.
Yep.
So
I'm so inspired by that.
As you age. Yeah.
I'm so inspired by that. I also had someone write in who, I think this person said they're in their 30s. I had someone write in something similar and they're like, I'm in my 40s and I feel like I just missed the boat. I'll have people comment on my stuff too that are like, I wish I would have left the church when I was younger and liked my body more. I know it's complicated with like body image and stuff like that. And I don't want to speak on something that I don't know in that same way maybe. But I will say, like, I think that those are all made up things that we've been told.
Yeah, it's just a matter of like rewiring your brain. It takes a while for sure. And especially when you have this like deep set, almost like shame against your body type of a thing, like you're taught that it's like shameful to ever show your shoulders or whatever. And then with different body types, it's almost even more so, which is the saddest thing.
There's so much that goes into all of this. And that's why I think it's such an important thing, is because it really does feel like more than just like, oh, fun fashion. It's breaking down a lot of the messaging that women especially get. And I think that's what's so empowering about fashion. It does feel like a fuck you in a lot of ways to like
100%.
what we've been told our whole lives we need to do and we need to be. And that's why it's ironic, because I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, fashion, women are just vain or whatever. And I actually feel like it's the opposite. It's like pushing back against expectations.
100%. It's an act of self-love. You're allowing yourself to express yourself externally, you know? So
I got chills. I love that so much. We could talk for so much longer. Thank you so much, Victoria. I love you. I'm inspired by you. I will link your socials in the show notes so everyone can go follow you, because like I said, I feel like you're just always sharing good tips, tricks, where to buy certain things. And I just love following along. Have learned so much from you and can't wait to learn more.
I love you so much.
I love you. Thank you for being here. And thank you everyone for listening.
It
Bye.
was an honor.
GIRLSCAMP, it's Girls Camp.
This has been a 58 Ember production. For more shows, please visit the 58 Ember channel, 58ember.com, or find us at 58 Ember Media on socials.